One last battle to hold the line against the night.
The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
Hold the line. No one gets through, no matter what.
Sir, what are your orders?
There's only one order, Lieutenant. We hold.
Incoming transmission.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the Holonet on Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
Oh, yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the new Millennial Conservative Resistance does indeed begin right here, right now, with you! You are listening to, and damn, I hope you're watching the Holonet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. It is Saturday. It is the 13th of June in the year of our Lord 2020, the 4th year of the Trumpian age in the Plague Lands. That's right, I am here in Zona, in the age of the Rona. So, welcome to the show. This week has been just frickin' brutal. And, how? Well, my favorite so far is the extremely high quantity and low quality of fake news that is going around. And this is actually a story that I told my own family, as I said, wouldn't it be interesting if this were true? From the website bikernews.com, rumors, bikers allegedly throw Antifa out of the city in Placerville, California. According to various reports and rumors on social media, several motorcycle clubs coalesced to prevent an Antifa demonstration from taking place in Placerville, California. Given the recent George Floyd protests that have erupted throughout the U.S., various cities have been destroyed in part due to rioting. Spearheaded by Black Lives Matter, George Floyd protests devolved into rioting and looting by thousands of attendees. Far-left anarchist agitators Antifa have been apportioned significant blame for steering some of the chaos over the weekend. A tweet containing a Facebook post from a small California town telling how the infamous Hells Angels united with other clubs to reportedly repel an Antifa demonstration. The tweet now reads, the tweet is now deleted, Antifa has threatened the town of Placerville, California. They say anyone who stands in their way, there will be consequences. So Hells Angels and the Mongols biker clubs accepted the challenge. One repost read, unheard of but awesome. Hells Angels and Mongols team up against a common enemy. I really wish that I could sit here in my well-appointed outpost on the outskirts of the Sonoran Desert, the forward operations base of Mojo 50 in Arizona, and tell you that this was true. I wish I could tell you this was accurate. However, the Holonet has access to exclusive information from well-informed parties close to the organization that this is just plain not true. I have received reports that can be reasonably confirmed that many biker groups, Hells Angels included, have been opposing Antifa and have been opposing violent looting in several cities throughout the country. But unfortunately, there does not seem to be a grand alliance, as it were, of rival motorcycle gangs forthcoming to ride in like the proverbial 21st century cavalry coming over the hill. Not likely to happen. There's a long history of animosity between the largest of the motorcycle groups in the United States, and I usually try to steer clear of this kind of thing because I have family and friends who are a part of that lifestyle. Not necessarily a part of that organization, but are a part of the lifestyle. And I try not to report on it much. But it got the noggin jogging. I was thinking about it a bit and wondering, what is the military facility of motorcycles? So I went to We Are the Mighty, and I was very surprised to find out that like Air Force Special Ops do indeed ride cross-country bikes. Typically, the model they use is the Christini Technologies all-wheel drive 450cc motorcycle for special tactics personnel, Air Force Commandos. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty wild. That's your modern day 21st century cavalry right there. And, as much as my head was filled with these wonderful visions of a wall of motorcycles come screaming across the I-10, hundreds deep, 10 lanes wide, just bearing down into the cities where anarchists and socialists are trying to take over. As much as it's a wonderful thought process of people who I think are most indicative of the extremely independent American spirit, people who ride motorcycles and cowboys and the like, they're kind of akin, kind of part of Americana. As much as I think that would be a beautiful thing, not likely to happen. Not likely to happen. So I hate the crap in the cornflakes, so to speak, of people who were reading this going, yeah, but no, almost assuredly fake news. So newscomworld.com, Hells Angels bikers, the heroes guarding U.S. cities from Antifa terrorists. Well, I'm sure HA particularly loved this story. I cannot prove the veracity of it. But we had tweets like from Kenny Edelman, Hells Angels protecting a bar across from my motel in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Various reports are out there, but cannot confirm. So there's that. Now, quick toss over to one of our advertisers we need to talk about today. Guys, do you still have your Trump bucks? Are those still sitting in your bank account? Because if they are, you really need to look into preparewithmojo50.com. Preparewithmojo50.com. It's about preparation, not panic. It's about preparing for the days when a segment of your city gets carved off into an autonomous zone, and it may be difficult for you to pass through the center of town in order to get to the stores on the other side and the places where you need to buy your supplies for everyday life. So make sure you go to preparewithmojo50.com, which is mypatriotsupply.com. You get your special offer there of the 2-week or the 4-week food supply. On the 4-week food supply, you save $100. It's $197 for 2,000 calories a day, 284 servings, 12 food varieties, free shipping and handling, and there's a limit on that of 3 per household. So that is preparewithmojo50.com. Anything else you want to get from My Patriot Supply, start at preparewithmojo50.com. They'll know we sent you, and make sure you support these wonderful sponsors of Mojo 50 Radio. So, last Sunday, I got some images here for you. There was a fire at a massive construction site in the middle of downtown Phoenix. It was a huge apartment complex, which was under construction, which we'll go to video right here. Assuming it doesn't throw me to an ad first, which it's almost going to. Fox 10 reported on... Yeah, of course it's got an ad. Fox 10 reported on a fire that burned near 600 West Grand Street, just off of 7th Avenue. Videos and photographs shared by the fire department showed a massive blaze on the western edge of the Arizona City's Warehouse District, less than a mile south of the Sandra Day O'Connor Courthouse. Here it goes. Now it's spinning up. Crews say 40% of the building was completed when a second alarm fire broke out. Hundreds of firefighters responded. Flames were shooting 100 to 200 feet straight up in the air. This footage coming to us from Fox 10 in Phoenix right now. You can see the flaming wreckage of the building if you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, or BitChute. You got a report of Jennifer Martinez here. Let me see if we can get to the footage of the Here we go. Here's the actual footage of the fire itself. And you can see the massive fire in downtown Phoenix. Now, as soon as this happened, again, it was a wait and see. I wanted to wait to hear the evidence, wait to hear the data. Yesterday, just yesterday, so Friday, Fox 10 updated this story that authorities have located video footage of a man hurling what appears to be a Molotov cocktail at the apartment complex and starting this blaze. So it is now looking, yes, like arson. So here's the image you can see from Skyfox over Phoenix. Just the sheer size of this inferno that was burning on the west side of Phoenix, this apartment complex, now reportedly started by a man with a Molotov cocktail. This on the heels of massive protests in Phoenix and Scottsdale showing, hey, it doesn't have to be Minneapolis for somebody to burn down an affordable housing complex. So how insane is that? Right here in Phoenix. And very low key, very much a quieter news story. This did not make national headlines, but it should have. It took the better part, 100 firefighters, the better part of the evening to bring that fire under control. It was still smoldering on Monday morning. A massive new apartment complex, housing for hundreds of families, all gone in a single night. So again, that story coming from Fox 10 Phoenix, link in the description. How many more of these stories are going to be ignored? How many more are going to be misreported? What about that Amazon distribution center in California? Have we heard anything back on that fire yet? You remember this one? CNN.com? A warehouse that operated as an Amazon distribution center went up in flames after a 3-alarm fire broke out, engulfing the entire building. This just from the 5th. Footage from KABC in California. Of course, with an ad. We'll just go to the story for the time being. The Amazon Redlands warehouse. Here's an image. Aerial views of the fire showed entire sections of the warehouse had collapsed. Everyone got out safely, thank God. It was operated by a third party. But again, no indication as to the cause. Still under investigation. And really what this story is talking a lot about is the impact. I'm willing to put it out there right now. My feeling is that we're seeing a rash of arson, intentionally set fires, all related to the riots that are happening nationwide. I don't have hard proof yet. Again, this is a feeling. This is a feeling. It would be one hell of a coincidence, wouldn't it? For an apartment complex in Phoenix, an apartment complex in Minneapolis, an apartment complex, a distribution center in California. All goes down at the same time. And on its heels, Minneapolis City Council, story comes in yesterday, has voted unanimously to replace their police with a, quote, community-led model. The Minneapolis City Council on Friday, 18 days after the death of George Floyd, unanimously passed a resolution to replace the police department with a community-led public safety system. No details yet on what that community-led system will entail. I talked about this last week. The abolition of police is a foolish venture. Go to aspectrum.com, map that's available, which gives you all of the protests and rallies right now that are occurring or have occurred. You know, check your city on here. Link again will be in the description. These are how many protests, from the very large to the very small, have occurred related to Black Lives Matter. Now, mind you, this includes, the 40 people in Topeka, Kansas, all the way up to the 3,000 in Phoenix the other day. But with the rash of increasingly unusual demands we're seeing, for example, a petition launched to change the racist name of Lynchburg, Virginia, which was actually named after John Lynch, who was a Quaker who believed in emancipation and freed all of his slaves, because the name carries racist and horrifying connotations, even though it was named for an abolitionist. Yeah. With increasingly strange demands like these, with increasingly unstable elements out there, like those in the Seattle CHAZ, or Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, otherwise known as an unlawful assembly. I'm not going to give it the definition of an autonomous zone, because those actually exist and it's a legal framework internationally. And to call it that kind of lends credence. No, this is a riot and a protest that has gotten out of hand, and is now an unlawful assembly in Seattle. We need to keep telling people that. We need to keep referring to it as such. But the Seattle protesters have issued a list of just fantastical demands to the city of Seattle, that housing is a right, and that the police must be abolished to provide everyone free housing, and that college education is a right, and that the abolition of police will allow for that. And all of these pipe dreams, which are failing to realize that the base element of any system, any economic or governmental system, is safety. And if there's not a police force, a force to provide order and protection from crime, none of the rest of it exists. The rest of it is just a fever dream. So I did some looking. I did a bit of looking. I wanted to check what the legal definition of an autonomous zone really is. And there are a number of them throughout the world. For a long time there, Hong Kong, or the Special Administrative District of Hong Kong, was considered an autonomous zone. So was the city of Macau in China. Then you have areas that are considered to be autonomous from the rest of the government. Or like, for example, Washington, D.C. is considered autonomous because it reports directly to Congress and doesn't report to a state. But you have autonomous regions in the world. You have, usually in like fractured Eastern European or third world countries, you see this. You don't tend to see this in the Western world, with the exception of maybe the Caribbean. But in Russia, you had a Respublika, which is a autonomous republic. Eritrea, the Altai Republic, Bashkortostan, Buryatia, Chechnya, Chuvashia, Crimea, Dagestan, Ingushetia, Kabardino-Balkaria, Kalmykia, Karachay-Cherkessia, Karelia, Khakassia, Komi, Marieli, Moldova, Ossetia-Alania, Sakha, Tatarstan, Tuva, Udmurtia. These are areas of Russia that are somewhat autonomous, either based on a demographic difference, like the Kurds were requesting an autonomous region of Iraq, which would still be an integral part of the nation, however, would have its own rules. That is not what we're seeing in Seattle when we're seeing signs that say, you are now leaving the USA. As written in the Wall Street Journal article, the Seattle Secessionists. After police fell back, protesters declared a new autonomous zone. The Wall Street Journal, before you hit the paywall, wrote, "The founding of any new nation is worthy of note, and so it is with the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Several blocks of Seattle that have been seized by protesters, Occupy Wall Street types, and assorted opportunists. Now it's up to the citizens of the Chaz, adopting Federalist Number 1, to decide the important question whether anarchies of men are capable or not of establishing good government." Again, the Wall Street Journal, and this is by their editorial board, lending credence and weight to the concept of the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone or the Seattle Autonomous Zone from a legal political standpoint. You cannot give that weight, that credence. This is an illegitimate action. This is an illegal action by a group of anarchists, like the Paris Commune in the days of old. The Hill writes, protesters negotiate with local officials over leaving the Seattle Autonomous Zone. The Seattle Police Department has negotiated with the Black Lives Matter protesters who have occupied a 6-block radius for most of the week after driving police from the local precinct. Demonstrators in the city who had clashed with Seattle police repeatedly during protests over the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody forced officers out of the East Precinct Station at the beginning of the week, dubbing the area the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. During the week, organizers said that thousands of people were occupying the Chaz, the Wall Street Journal reported. BLM protesters had stated earlier they would not leave the area until the city had met its list of demands regarding police reform and increasing funding for Seattle's black communities. This is very reminiscent of the Occupy Wall Street occupation of Zuccotti Park, except this is not a piece of private property that permitted this demonstration to take place, as was Zuccotti Park. No, this is 6 blocks of downtown Seattle, where these anarchists, these protesters, these rioters just moved in, forced out the police, and put up barricades and said, this is ours now. They were quoted as saying, a BLM spokeswoman, Jessica Kilpatrick, said, "This is a temporary occupation until we get our demands met," she told the Wall Street Journal. Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin has agreed to invest at least $100 million in the city's minority communities and is establishing a community-driven Black Commission. A Durkin spokeswoman told the paper that Seattle police were responding to calls in the area on Friday and that some officers had returned to the precinct, though the Journal reported no police presence was visible in the Chaz on Friday. President Trump tweeted, "Radical left Governor Jay Inslee and the mayor of Seattle are being taunted and played at a level our great country has never seen before. Take back your city now. If you don't do it, I will." In other news, officials in Nashville have warned Antifa protesters not to attempt to create an autonomous zone similar to what has been seen where'd that link go? Similar to what has been seen there in Seattle. And there was a very brief attempt to create one, but it was quickly disbanded. Also, in the city of Asheville, North Carolina, there was an attempt to create an Asheville Autonomous Zone, which was very rapidly taken down by the police. We have a video now from dailymail.co.uk. So it appears that similar movements are attempting to follow the same design and establish quote-unquote autonomous zones within many cities. That music means we've got to take our break. We'll be back. You're listening to Holonet here on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Stick around.
listening to the Holonet on Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
And we're back. You're listening to, and God, I hope you're watching the Holonet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Coming back to what we were discussing prior to the break, Asheville, North Carolina, a report comes in from the dailymail.co.uk. Asheville Police Department was seen tearing down the autonomous zone set up by protesters in the video you're seeing on your screen right now if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook Live. Not too much to see, just police officers taking away a series of pallets and a series of road barricades that seem to have been very haphazardly placed up in Asheville, North Carolina. Moral of the story, kids, one got away, and that was Seattle. But your local police forces are now wise. They are not going to permit this to occur in cities around the country. It's just not going to happen. And it is grossly irresponsible for the mainstream media to continue to refer to these demonstrations by their chosen names. At best, you should say the so-called CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And I know I've been guilty of it in this very show, but just because it's very wordy. It's very difficult to talk about. But what's important is, like in that Wall Street Journal article, we cannot give any kind of weight or credence or validity to these attempts to establish some sort of extrajudicial occupation of territory here in the United States. There are no autonomous zones within the continental United States of America other than those that have been set aside by treaty law. They're called reservations. And they are regions that have co-sovereignty and a set level of governmental and administrative autonomy. Calling your protest area an autonomous zone and reacting as if law no longer exists, at least the United States law no longer exists within these zones. This is not Chechnya. This is not Abkhazia. This is not Ossetia. This is not the Crimea. We are not in Eastern Europe. We are not in the Caucasus, in Asia Minor. We are not in the Middle East. We are in the continental United States of America. We are in the Western world, in a nation that is governed by laws. You are breaking them. You should go to jail. It is no longer a peaceful demonstration when you are denying people access to their homes and businesses. It is no longer a peaceful demonstration when you have occupied public property like a police station indefinitely, forcing emergency services to reduced functionality. Now, what is the solution? That is up for debate. The solution of the Obama administration when it came to the Occupy Wall Street protests and the occupation of Zuccotti Park was to wait them out. Arguably, this was one of President Obama's more successful moves. The Occupy Wall Street movement burned itself out in spectacular and hilarious fashion. But we are in a very different nation today. Dare I say that through the full course of the Obama administration, its true mission of fomenting greater division amongst the population of the United States was successful, and we find ourselves divided now in more ways than ever. And President Trump is a divisive president. He was not elected to be a great unifier. He was elected to put America first. And for a disturbingly large segment of our own population, that is anathema. That is the opposite of what they want. They are globalists. They are in favor of a global society. They are citizens of the earth. They don't want to be citizens of the United States. They don't want borders. They don't want national distinctiveness. They are against the very existence of the concept of American exceptionalism. They want to be just citizens of the world, and they want global homogenization. They claim they want diversity. They don't. What they want is a homogenized society that is quote-unquote inclusive of and respectful of all their diverse cultural and social wants and needs. Such an animal simply does not exist. Never has. And cannot. If our strength is in our diversity, if your rallying cry is that your strength is your diversity, then you are a nationalist. I have news for you. Because you need a diversity of nation states. And that is our strength. The United States is strong because it is a melting pot. It is a fusion of different, diverse nationalities, cultures, and societies. All held together by the Judeo-Christian principles of Western society, the Enlightenment mentality of our forebears. Where we fall apart, literally, is with this social balkanization. And the very statement of Black Lives Matter is indicative of this problem. I understand the arguments. I've heard them on both sides. Why Black Lives Matter, of course all lives matter, but we're talking about Black lives because they're under threat. The question is, they're under threat from whom and from what? Institutionalized racism, truly institutionalized racism, under force of law, has been absent in our nation for almost 50, 60 years now. Because I believe I remember a Chris Rock comedy special where he said, you know, it was anywhere, the civil rights movement ended anywhere from, 1955 to like 1969 or whenever your neighborhood decided to start acting right. But either way, we are now in 2020. It's quite a long time. I mean, yes, it is in living memory, but still quite a long time since institutional racism was truly a thing. You cannot point to a single law on the books, a single regulation on the books today that upholds Jim Crow or that upholds institutional racism. The closest you can come to it is affirmative action statutes. Yeah, believe it or not, that's the closest you can come to laws that make a requirement based on the color of one's skin. How's that for a brain bender? But that's where we are today. Black Lives Matter because they're the ones that are under attack. Not you, Whitey. Well, right now, we are all under attack. Regardless of skin color, black, white, green, blue, purple, yellow, red, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We are all under attack by the same force. It is the force of polarization that has been driving us apart. And it is a deliberate, intentional action by those who are threatened by the concept of an America united in purpose. Outside of the U.S., our geopolitical adversaries delight when they turn on the news and they see a 200-foot column of fire in Phoenix. And they see an Amazon distro center burning in California. And they see a Target on fire in Minnesota. And they see a portion of Seattle carved off as a so-called or autonomous zone. When they see civil unrest in the United States, When they see riots in the street, they see Scottsdale Fashion Square with the windows broken in and people running off with Dolce & Gabbana and Gucci and Apple products, they delight. Because they see our weakness. They see how very fractured we are and how easy it is to divide us. How simple it is to divide us. George Floyd's death was a tragedy. There have been many other tragedies. But the biggest tragedy of all is how reactive we are as a nation. We're a powder keg, ready to explode at any provocation. Not internationally, we've gotten better at that. I'd like to think. It took 9/11. It took 9/11 to stir us to action. It took the death of over 3,000 American citizens, innocents, to stir us to action. But when it comes to fighting against ourselves, oh, the cost is not that high. All it takes is one man, one woman, and a sufficiently terrible story to stoke centuries of anger in us. Anger, not just between black and white, but anger between have and have not. Anger between the cities and the countryside. Between the East Coast and West Coast elites and the heart of our nation. The wide open fields of the Great Plains, the mountainous regions of the Continental Divide. The steamy fields of the South. All these areas that are so-called red states. We are so polarized now, so ready to fight, that the powder keg is wide open, and all it takes is a spark. And every time there's a good spark, or our adversaries hear the strike of the flint, they hold their breath in eager anticipation. And they watch. And they listen. And they close their eyes and say, maybe this time. Maybe this time. It'll all blow apart. And the anarchists in our own nation and the progressives in our own nation do just the same. They close their eyes, they listen close and say, maybe this is the chance. This is when we can get what we want. And just know that I'm not talking about the Black Lives Matter protesters who are fighting the grave injustice that black Americans face every day through individual cases of racism and individual bigotries that are allowed to slide, and individual bigots themselves who are allowed to creep into positions of authority. No, those protesters, those are the best of us. Those are the Martin Luther Kings. No, what I'm talking about are the opportunists, the Antifa, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. I'm talking about those who see a tragedy and consult their literature and realize that one cannot allow a tragedy to go waste. I've been very pensive this week. Very thoughtful. And before I get too deep into this, make sure you check out AmericanPrideRoasters.com, AmericanPrideRoasters.com, our official coffee of Mojo 50. You can get Izzo's Rage, the angriest coffee ever. Still no Holonet Fuel, DM at DM. Come on, get on that, dude. Doc's Bacon Blast, Uranus Hurts, Ron's Sexual Chocolate. Make sure you get yourself some fine coffee made by fine American growers. AmericanPrideRoasters.com, AmericanPrideRoasters.com, official coffee, Mojo 50. But I've been very pensive, very thoughtful this week. Very consumed, as it were, with how close we seem to get with every small push. How it seems to get a little worse every time. How the division isn't healing. My wife and I talk about it frequently. And I'm of two minds. Like many of you, I hope that we'll all just calm down. Remember that we're countrymen. Remember that we all share this nation. And move back to sanity. In another perspective, I puff up my chest and I say, let it happen in my time if it must happen, so that it doesn't have to happen in my children's time. Could we see a balkanization of the United States of America? Could we see the so-called American divorce? I think it's illustrated pretty well in these two images. The first is your classic Gadsen Flag, don't tread on me. Historically significant because of the American Revolution, where the figure of the snake was illustrated, cut into 13 pieces, with the first incarnation of the snake flag being the join or die. Right here. It's a terrible image, but I'll blow it up a little bit. The Join or Die banner in the American Revolution, showing the each colony, New England, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina, showing that it was necessary to unite. Later, the Gadsen Flag, very clearly illustrating, don't tread on me, don't tread on my rights. Warning of the inevitable retaliation of the rattlesnake should you step upon it. It bites you. And then fast forward to 2020. The Black Power fist strangling the rattler, with the text beneath, over a red field, we will tread. The obvious implication to anyone who knows any history being that the group marching beneath this banner is prepared to tread upon the rights of their countrymen for what they deem to be morally right. How far we've come from join or die to don't tread on me to we will tread. Just under 300 years. My, how we've changed. Washington would weep. It's stories like this that indicate how divided we've become. Illinois teacher says the term white privilege is as offensive as the N-word. This story coming from the New York Post. An Illinois school has launched an investigation into after a teacher claimed white privilege was as offensive as the N-word, according to reports. The Palatine High School teacher, who was not identified, prompted backlash when she said in a since-deleted Facebook post calling out white privilege was racist. I find the term white privilege as racist as the N-word. You have not walked in my shoes either, so do not make assumptions about me and my so-called privilege, she wrote. The educator, who teaches social studies, apparently then went on to call Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton race baiters. You think America is racist? Then you have been hoodwinked by the white liberal establishment and race baiters like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, she wrote. To which, if I were listening right now to my audience, I could hear the sound of heads collectively nodding. Because I agree with this also. I rewrote this headline. Teacher under investigation for making factual statements. Accurate statements, rather. Local activist Tim McGowan, who recently organized a Black Lives Matter protest, called for the school to fire the teacher. News station WMAQ reported, everyone is entitled to speak out and speak their mind, but as a teacher molding minds, it's completely unacceptable to have those kinds of narrow ideas. No, they need to be your kind of narrow ideas. Don't they, Tim? Don't they? Principal Tony Medina said the social media posts from the teacher, quote, do not represent the values and principles of the staff, WMAQ reported. We are currently conducting an investigation and will follow through with the appropriate measures. I have no doubt, 100 over 100, that this school district will bend the knee and the teacher will be fired. No question about it. That teacher's career is over now due to wrongthink. Thought crime, folks. 1984. It's here. Speaking of, NPR reports transgender health protections reversed by Trump administration. This is NPR, okay? National Public Radio. This quote from Health and Human Services. HHS respects the dignity of every human being. As we have shown in our response to the pandemic, we vigorously protect and enforce the civil rights of all to the fullest extent permitted by our laws as passed by Congress. Roger Severino, who directs the Office for Civil Rights in the Department of Health and Human Services, said in a written statement announcing that the HHS rule had become final. The rule is set to go into effect by mid-August. It is a rule that would remove the non-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people when it comes to health care and health insurance. It is one of many rules and regulations put forward by the Trump administration that defines sex discrimination as only applying when someone faces discrimination for being male or female and does not protect people from discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. Because this is an organization that is dedicated to health and human services, and it must be medically accurate in its definitions. It is not medically accurate that gender exists on a spectrum. Gender is a binary biological state. You are either a male or a female. There are two genders. Two. This many. Two. Supporters of the new rule said this is a necessary reversal of Obama-era executive overreach and will reduce confusion about the legal meaning of sex discrimination because they made the meaning so broad it was nigh unenforceable. Critics argue the rule could further harm to an already vulnerable group, transgendered people, in the midst of pandemic and historic unrest spurred by the killing of George Floyd at the hands of police. what the final rule does. The rule focuses on the non-discrimination protections laid out in Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. The federal law established it is illegal to discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability in certain health programs or activities. In 2016, an Obama-era rule explained the protections regarding sex encompass those based on gender identity, which it defined as male, female, neither, or combination of male and female, which is too vague and broad. Severino added, "We're going back to the plain meaning of those terms, which is based on biological sex." He said the rule could save hospitals and insurers $2.9 billion over 5 years, since they will be relieved of the requirement to print notices of non-discrimination in several languages and include them with any significant mailings. So it's a reduction of regulation, and regulation based on a biological truth. In other words, it's exactly what we want. This is not rolling back protections. The protections were already there. We have a critical divide in our nation, illustrated very well by these two flags. Don't tread on me, and we will tread. This more or less says it all. There is a portion of our population who want to be left alone with their own views, their own cultural and social understanding. They don't want it forced upon them by a government body or by another power or by other people in the culture. And there is another side which says, no, you will obey. You're wrong. And we will make you correct. There it is, folks. On display for all to see. Don't tread on me. Respect my rights. Respect my right to hold an opinion that is different from yours. Respect my right to have views of what is true and what is not true that differ from yours, because we do not agree any longer about the fundamental realities of life. But you need to respect that and not enforce your views on me or on my children, and the other side that says no. You will conform, you will obey, because your views are offensive to me. Hold the line, boys and girls. Don't let them tread on you. You're listening to HoloNet on the Mighty Mojo 50. Good night. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. From Phoenix.